This is the Illinois Nutrient Loss Podcast, episode number 7, Handling Livestock Waste, part 1 of 4, Confinement. We're now joined by Jay Sullivan, an extension specialist in livestock management. He has been in this part of the business for about 25 years. Jay, can you tell me a little bit about your background, please?
Been with Extension for a number of years. Been here for about 18 years in Illinois and a few years before that in Missouri. And working in livestock has been part of what I've done for most of my career. Although in my position as an engineer and in my current role, working in environmental issues, I get into quite a few different topics from energy efficiency, and clear down to some livestock and water quality issues. So it's kind of nice to be working in this area. It's one that's carried through all my career.
Are there best management practice guidelines for livestock and confinement?
If we look at it from a confinement standpoint, there are some definite things we can think about. One of the places we start with is really need to think about and manage and utilize that manure as a fertilizer. If we start from there, it does make it a lot easier to think about what are the other things we need to do. One of the first things is make sure we're containing anything that has been whether it be the actual manure, water running off of and running across a manure covered areas, those kinds of things. So we do the containment of it. We also look at keeping clear what we call clean water clean, but you keep the clean water clean, dirty water contained. So if we've got any place where we can divert water off of an area, we definitely try to do those kind of things. Then the next thing is treating it as a fertilizer. Once we have it in a containment, applying it at agronomic rates, based on U of I agronomy recommendations, in which those recommendations now are looking at applying it with what is referred to as the maximum return to nitrogen. You'll hear the term MRTN, where you calculate what's that worth and applying that at a rate that is most economical and most effective for the crop production as well. The one caveat in there is on a lot of this manure, we actually need to look at what's a phosphorus buildup on it. So there are some phosphorus numbers we need to be aware of from a soil standpoint, which kind of brings up the other point. One of the things we want to work with is we need to make sure we get a good sample of the manure so we know what we're actually applying, but we also need to have a good idea of what our soil test is. Need a soil test on a regular basis. We also need to know what our production is out there, so we're matching what we need to bring the soil up to meet that actual production yield that we've got out there, what we've pulled out of it, and replace that on a yearly basis. From that standpoint, we move forward to what are the other things we can think about. Is things like injecting it or incorporating the manure immediately after it's been applied, and that reduces our losses to ammonia, along with just reducing the potential for it to be washed off in a rain event or volatilized and basically lost one way or the other, which be nutrient movement is offsite would be either rainfall moving the nutrients off in the water, or volatilization of the ammonia off of it, which both cases we're losing nitrogen and possibly phosphorus in the rainfall event. Need to collect those samples the recommendation out there is to collect those samples on a yearly basis. If you can collect them beforehand and get the sample data back, that's a good way to do it. But the other way we talk about in a lot of the trainings is collect it yearly, keep a record of where you're going, keep a track of how it may be changing over time, and you look at what was last year's numbers, how did that compare to the years before, and use those to plan out your manure application for this year, and then you adjust any commercial fertilizers you put on top or any side dress into the next year based on what maybe changes you had when you get your soil sample or your manure sample back this year. Then there are the other pieces of it, like in the application area, observe those setbacks, stay at least 200 feet away from water sources, 150 feet back from wells, 200 feet back from open water sources, and try not to apply or minimize the applications onto snow-covered and frozen areas. Those are a lot of the things that we talk about. We go through those kinds of things as part of the Certified Livestock Manager training that we talk to producers about, but it's also something we talk to even the smaller producers who don't necessarily have to go through that training. They need to be thinking about those same best management practices.
Just a little additional information. You mentioned the MRTN, or the maximum return to nitrogen, and that is the maximum, not the maximum amount of nitrogen that should be applied, but the maximum amount of nitrogen for optimal yield that you might get, or optimum amount of nitrogen for the maximum yield. And you can find that rate on the nitrogen rate calculator for Illinois and all, for instance, of the 12 Midwestern states. And you just search Google for nitrogen rate calculator. You'll find it actually on the Iowa State University websites. Now, back to manure. Does it offer manure that is any benefits to water quality or soil health as opposed to synthetic fertilizers?
There are a lot of research and a lot of idea, a lot of belief that yes, there is. The thing that we are starting to really look at is what is that, and to be able to put hard numbers to it. I'm not sure we're right there at it, but we do know that it provides organic matter. A lot of times it's a little bit more pH balanced and nutrient balanced, and sometimes, and it's known that some of the nutrients are a little bit more available in manure than they are immediately available to the crop than what they are in some of your commercial fertilizers. And also, as we apply them in the fall, they are, because of the way they're mixed, they're already somewhat a little more stable, not being as prone to being leached or lost through the winter time with rainfall events and leach downward quite as bad. But that's kind of a small piece. The other pieces they do with that organic matter and other things, they can kind of contribute to soil structure and water holding capacity, just because it is that organic matter you're applying. So there is some benefit to it. I mean, it is kind of the original. Manure is one of the original organic fertilizers.
Jay Solomon is with University of Illinois Extension. You've been listening to the Nutrient Loss Reduction Podcast. I'm U of I Extension's Todd Gleason.